Hi, welcome to the Queen's Park Theatre. We're 2022 and this is the 40th anniversary of the theatre, and we're lucky enough today to talk with Tony Turner. Thank you, Tony. Tony is like an icon of the building. He's been here, he started, I believe, when the building opened as a doorman, was it?
That's correct, yeah.
A doorman.
Yeah, 27th of March 1982. We actually started as staff. We were appointed probably about two weeks or so before that. The council had appointed a theatre manager at that stage.
Yes.
Nigel McComb. And Nigel was working over at the Civic Centre, and he was getting all the paperwork ready and liaising with people to get shows here and things like that. And one of his tasks was to employ staff. And the staff were obviously going to be part-timers, casuals. So when the opportunity popped up, I was also working over at the city in their town planning department, and decided that it would be a good idea to have a second job, something a bit different, and applied. I then had an interview with the town clerk, who thought that me being a town planner, it would cast dispersions on my position over there. And I said to him, I said, so you're saying that your theatre is not world class, is that the problem? And he said, I think you've got a good point, you can have the job. So I left it at that. So that was the first front end, and Nigel basically got us together a couple of times. The building was still being completed up until almost the last week. So we came in a couple of times and he pointed out where toilets were, where the box office was, and we did the basics.
Yep.
And he said to us, look, any time you want to come in and get familiar with the place before the shows start, just feel free. So one night after work, I decided I'd walk from the office over here down to the stage door area, and things were fairly quiet, but I opened the stage door and I walked in, and there's nobody around here, nobody in the foyer, so I walked up the prom side stairs up there into the lower auditorium. I opened the door, there was nobody there either, and I came out and I walked out there and there's alarms going, all sorts of things. So I thought, well, I must go and sit in the car for a while and see if somebody else arrives. So I'm walking up there and just about get to the car, the police arrived. Have you seen anybody in the theatre? I said, no, I've been right through the place. He said, and never saw a soul.
You set everything off, haven't you?
And I'd set it all off. And then Nigel comes walking across and he sees me standing with the police. He comes, I said, this bloke will know me. I said, he's the theatre manager. And he goes, no, never seen him in my life. I thought, you rotten sod. So that was my introduction to theatre in that sense.
You would have actually seen the building as it was being built.
Yeah, well, working with the council, the history of the place actually goes back quite a number of years. I mean, I started at the city, or the town as it was then, town of Geraldton, in 74. And prior to that, the engineer had the planning section under his control, but they decided that they had some land at Mohammed's, and they had some lands up at Mount Scott. And they decided that they would subdivide Mount Scott first and sell the blocks as residential blocks, and put the money, the profits from that, into a reserve fund for an entertainment facility. They started to do the same with the most of Mohammed's flats, and by the time the council decided that they were going to build a facility, they had $2 million in this reserve, and they managed to get $1 million from the state government.
Yep.
So for $3 million, they got this building.
That's quite incredible. I mean, in today's terms, to build a theatre, you can't do it for any less than 30 million, and 30 million would not get you much. So right. That is an astounding accomplishment for the city.
And it was very, forward-thinking on the council's part.
What was the community reaction like to that?
The community reaction initially was mixed. There was a fairly strong pro-theatre, but there was also a very noisy anti-theatre, because spent $3 million on this building, it's a white elephant, and that was right through from the start and some of the earlier shows that happened. So obviously they weren't theatre goers unless you put something on that they enjoyed. But that seemed to wane and disappear eventually because the class of shows that were coming were world class.
I think that's a very interesting point because a lot of people do get upset about the cost of actually having the venue here, but it really is a civic building that attracts a lot of good to the city, and some of the shows that you must have seen over the years, you would have seen that.
Yeah. I mean, it's still been available for locals too.
Yes.
I mean, you ask the staff here, the end of the year is a nightmare for them because you've got all of the dance studios with 60 or 70 or 80 kids coming in, all going across the stage, performing to mums, dads and aunties and uncles.
Yep.
But that's what it should be. It should be part of the community.
Absolutely.
And it's good to see that over the years, those studios that are in town have consistently come back in the majority.
Yeah. I think they had a struggle over the last year with the COVID situation, but what it's done is make people appreciate when you come back into this venue the capabilities that this has that a hall for hire does not have.
That's right. I mean, prior to this, the venues in town was the gymnasium over at the high school and or one of the hotels, the Winter Sun having a fairly big room of potentially 400 people, but the old Sunseeker Hotel, which is where the police station is now built, had an upstairs section that a lot of shows used to turn in up there.
Yeah.
But just going back to the council, I mean, the mayor at the time that this was being built was Lyle Harris. Now, Lyle was a media person. He was a radio announcer, very much into the arts himself, and a really nice guy. And he's too, I see the deputy mayor was Phil Cooper. Now, Phil was sort of your average working man type of person. So he'd call a spade a shovel, and people know exactly where he stood. So that combination was quite good because they, being the two opposites, they really got things done through their discussions and that, and their council were quite strong too.
So when the theatre first opened, was there a big turnout for the? What was the first show?
Okay. I'm just trying to think what the first show was, actually.
You must have seen so many.
Look, it was a celebratory week. The whole of the events, in conjunction with Nigel McComb, had been organised by John Thornton from down Perth. Now, John, going back into the history of him, in the 1960s, he was John Thornton Trio, so he was in a jazz band of three. He moved into, I think, about an 8-piece band called JT and the Jasmine, and he was the JT of the JT and the Jasmine. He played piano and banjo, I think it was, or something like that, but they had saxophones and all sorts of things in there, and they're very popular in Perth in the 60s and 70s. John teed up with a fellow by the name of Stan Bird, and Stan and John basically managed the Regal Theatre in Perth as an historic building.
Yes.
And for many, many years, till about, I think John retired in 2010, 12, something like that, 2012. And Stan's still going, both of them are still going as far as I know. But John organised a whole week of performances. And we had Ashton Stage Lighting from Perth came up, and Ian Ashton and his brother, and they brought up their ex-World War II searchlights and parked them out the front, prom side and opposite prom side near the fountain, and crisscrossed them in the night sky for the whole week to give it atmosphere. And we had, every night we had something ranging from plays, comedy, we had, I think the ballet was in here, maybe the symphony orchestra or something like that. There's a mixture. I do have programs at home.
And it's interesting because you wouldn't get those shows without a venue like this. No. You actually need that capacity for a lot of these shows to make it financially viable and worthwhile to tour.
But when you've got 30 or 40 people performing, you've got to pay X dollars per person. That becomes quite a expensive ticket seat, even in a venue like this.
You're right. I mean, it was very forward thinking of the council to actually get this, and it was a risk at the time, but I think it's a great asset for the community. Now, tell us some of your favourite shows. I think I know which one is going to be your most favourite. But
well, the one that I missed that I would have liked to see was during opening week, and that was Timothy West. Now, Timothy West, since then, has done a number of... Timothy is the husband of Prunella Scales, which was Sybil out of Faulty Towers. And they're still married. She's not that well, but they're still married over in England. But Timothy has since done Winston Churchill and a few other serious plays and done it very, very well. He just didn't turn up on the night here. And we're all standing around waiting, all the audience is sitting in there, and no Timothy West. And he rang up and said, "Oh, look," he said, "I'm just leaving Perth. How long is it to go to Geraldton?" And somebody said, "Forget it. You know, you won't get here in time." So it was a bit of a disaster on that night. But look, my favourite shows, you'd never guess, but a little bit of country music and things like that is.
I think maybe we might need to have a look at something. Yeah, bring it on over. So yes.
Yeah, country music. Look, people like John Williamson have been here.
Yep.
You know,
but this one has got to be your all-time favourite.
This one is my favourite, and for those who remember the man, Slim Dusty, and this photo was taken right here on the stage.
That's incredible.
It was his.
This is you, Tony?
That was me 20 years ago.
20 years ago. That's incredible.
I age well for somebody that's 302, don't I?
Come on, show us the back of it as well.
But as part of front of house manager, just a story. As part of the front of house manager, was meeting the people down here at the door, just to see if anything was needed, front of house wise, any drinks or whatever. And Slim was a great guy to talk to. His family were always travelling with him.
That's fantastic. I'm going to have a hold of that, Tony.
Yeah, that comes back, Andrew.
I think it'll look good up on the wall.
I'm sure it would. It looks good on the wall in my place. But no, he was a really thorough gentleman. So this particular show, on stage here, that set was the front of a hotel. And he would enter from the back and come through, join his band in the front and play. And at one stage, I think it might have been interval, I came down to see if he needed anything. And I said, "Is there any chance of getting a signature from me?" He said, yeah, no worries, come down. And Slim's little trick, even from the days I saw him as a kid up in the bush, when he finished the show, he used to sit on the edge of the stage. People would come up and he'd chat to them, he'd sign autographs and take photos. He'd never go out the front. His wife's sister, she used to sell the merchandise.
Yep.
And she'd almost drink the bar dry sometimes, but she'd sell merchandise down there. But Slim never used to go out the front. He always met his audience here. And after the audience went, he said, "Yeah, let's just stand up in here." And I had a program that he had with him, and he was actually signing that program. The whole of the staff got dressed up in country gear that night. Our theatre manager was very much into carrying the theme into the foyer. So because it was a country music night, we did country music out there and country look.
Yeah.
We borrowed the gear from one of the local stores.
Very nice.
And funny enough, I had some photos taken in the foyer, and he came back. The back of that is signed 2000. That was a 1988 tour. So when he came back the second time, my missus brought that in, got it mounted, didn't tell me, and gave it to his daughter Anne Kirkpatrick to get signed. End of the show, I come down here. And she comes out and said, "Oh, somebody might like to take..." "Oh, I shouldn't have brought this out, should I?"
But it's another story to go with it, isn't it?
Oh, they're always,
Now, you started in 82 or 83, but when did you finish up? Because you finished up a number of times from what I hear.
Yeah, look, we started on, place was open 27th of March, coming up to the 40th year. Our role initially was doorman and ushers, that's all we had, and just to direct people to toilets, to get back to their seats and so on. The role changed after a while. Nigel, once the theatre had started, Nigel was the sort of manager who would set up a system, set up the theatre, get it running, and then move somewhere else. And he actually moved to the Arts Centre in Alice Springs, because that was being built at the time.
Yep.
So he did exactly the same job there and set it all up. Following on from him was Bill Mason, and Bill liked to be involved in the theatre. He came from the Hole in the Wall Theatre in Perth, and he liked to be involved in everything, but he got to the point where, "No, I don't want to stay here every night. So that was our role,
Yes.
and then he sort of created front of house manager and sort of positions that were able to carry on running the place while he wasn't there. So whilst I started as a doorman, moved into the front of house, and I did that position right through to the end. So I finished, I worked through pretty much consistently until my wife got breast cancer. And that was in, I'm trying to think now, that was probably in 2001 or thereabouts, was when I said, look, I'm finishing off, I'm going to look after her. And she went through treatment, the whole treatment, and was given a breathing space. We think we've got it all. And then, no, it might have been later than that actually, it was probably 2005, 6 or something like that, I think it was. And yeah, for a couple of years, 2 or 3 years, she was fine, and then it came back, but it was scattered in the chest wall, so they gave her 18 months to live, and that's pretty much what she did, and she passed away in 2014. But when she'd gone through the first lot of treatment and was feeling relatively good, she said to me, she said, you're going to miss that theatre, you've been there so long, and she actually worked here too, so she knew what the environment was.
In fact, I think you met here, didn't you?
We did. We were very good friends for a number of years. She had a husband, she lost her husband at some stage there, and the ushers that were here, bless their souls, after a couple of years decided that they were having an ushers party and I should go along. And I said, I'm front of house manager, I'm a bloke, I'm not part of you girl mob, you know. And they said, no, you've got to come along, you have to come along. And of course it was just a bit of a setup for us because they knew how well we'd got on, and they reintroduced us to each other. And we got married, and we got married for 20 years before she passed. But I did come back at her suggestion to see if I was going to miss the place or not. And it sort of was different. Staff had changed over about the 12 or 18 months I was away, and atmosphere from the staff point of view wasn't quite the same. So I did about 3 shows, and each time I went home and said, no, I'm really not enjoying it. So I pulled the pin and spent the time with her towards the end. And once she passed, I moved on out of the corporate world and finished up doing music 24/7 in one form or another around town.
That's fantastic. Well, it's not fantastic what has happened to you, but it's fantastic that you found your passion in music.
Yeah. And I think the theatre probably helped me in that to a degree, because as a small kid in the bush town in Norseman, I had the desire to go and play music. A couple of guys up the road were rock and rollers. And Mum always used to say, you're not going up there, they're a rough mob, you can't go up there. So Dad bought this little mellow chord, which is a keyboard plus buttons like a piano accordion, but laid flat. And I used to sit at home with frustration and play this thing. So over the years, I sort of drifted a bit away from music, and then when my wife passed, I was sitting at home one day, and my youngest son, who has got a band in Perth, the Bamboo CA Rhythm Section, that was an advert, by the way, but he rang me one night and said, what are you doing, Dad? And I said, I'm sitting in front of TV. He said, what did you do last night? And I said, sitting in front of TV. He said, have you got a guitar? I said, yep. He said, get it out, find a teacher, see where it takes you. So that took me, I found a teacher the next day who'd just come into town. He's a great guy, and I'm still going to him. Not that I'm not learning things, it's a case that he's got so much to teach. But that got me into a band for about 4 years, and in that band we toured right up to Karratha, all the way down Onslow, all the way down the coast. Had some bookings down in Margaret River in Denmark. Did a couple of recordings. COVID hit, we dissolved that, so it's been a bit up and down since then.
Yeah.
Went into a duo for 12 months, now back to solo stuff.
Okay.
So yeah, it's I put it partly to the sun, but partly to having been involved in the theatre.
Yes.
And seeing people on stage and how they are when they come away from that audience. You know, they're as pumped as.
I think I feel a similar thing to you with that as well. I mean, my role is similar to what you've done, and I feel it's a privilege to actually be amongst all of these shows that come here and seeing the effect it has on the audiences. People often are quite moved by what they see on stage without knowing it.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
think in this position, you actually get to see both sides of that. You see the shows, but you see the audience as well.
And look, we've had, I mean, there was, I can't think of the guy's name, a Scottish guy, singer, and solo act basically. He came here, he was breathing difficulty, he was hardly walking. The show started, he came on here, he jigged around and sang and carried on, went off stage. He had some tablets lined up ready to go. He had the tablets, he had some water, he lay on the floor for 5 minutes, came back again, did the second half, and they carted him off up to hospital after that to see if he was okay. But that's dedication to the audience.
Yeah.
The audience had no idea.
No.
You know,
No, that's right.
what was being shown was what was here, the show must go on.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that to me was, I'm getting goosebumps thinking about that, but to me that's a thing that about theatre. You pay your price for your ticket, you sit there, you get entertained. These guys on here are as dedicated as you'd ever find anywhere. And they get as much out of the audience as the audience gets out of them.
Yeah, it's true.
Otherwise they wouldn't come back.
Yes, very much so.
Yeah. I mean, I've met some great artists, you know, Harry Seacombe, Spike Milligan, two of the famous goons.
Yeah.
Sir Harold, or Circumference as he called himself, came in here one night and they were going to do a sound check on him. He stood here and he said, "Why do I need a sound check?"
Yes.
The voice bounced off there almost out the back door. And he didn't need microphones. The Barry Crocker was another one, and I have to laugh at this because we had a technician, Ian Ashton from Ashton Stage Lighting. Ian was a technician here for a while, and Ian's working on stage putting gaffer tape over cables. Barry Crocker walks in and says, "Hey, you. Oh, you talking to me, pal?" "Yeah," he says, "I want a Shaw 55. I haven't got one." Putting the tape down. Barry Crocker says, "Well, just go downtown and get one." "No," he said, "the town's so small." He just left it. Crocker's face just about dropped on the floor, and he just and walked out, and then come back and did his show later with whatever microphone they gave him. But I just, you know, the attitude. I mean, Ian had been in showbiz for quite a while, and technician-wise, and knew it all.
Yep.
So he wasn't fazed by celebrity flicking his fingers and asking him to go and do something. You know.
Yeah.
He was also a bit of a prankster. There's many stories about that. We had a show on stage, I've got to tell you one at least. Had a show on stage here called Caravan.
Yes.
Now, the play Caravan is about 3 or so couples that go away for a weekend in a caravan, and there's the interplay between each person's partners and so on, and it gets a bit muddled up towards the second half. But the set was a caravan actually cut in half. The roof had been taken off, but all the insides were still as a complete caravan. So the audience could see inside. The artist would come in through the door. This afternoon it was all raining, and they're all stuck inside. The two ladies up the far end there playing cards. They each had a drink on the table. The other couple were sitting opposite each other. They hadn't spoken because they'd had a fight. And one guy walks in and he comes in, he props himself on the double bed at the other end. Boom, like this, and he's looking straight up into the lighting gallery. Before that, just before that scene, Ian said to me, "Grab that bucket of water and the pipette and go up on the grid." Now, the grid from here is probably 40 feet up or more. So I go up the stairs, carry this thing up there, walk over. I get to a point over here where I'm above him, but there was a light in the way and I couldn't, so sucked up the water in there. So he's lying there and it's going like this right next to him. He's looking at me, he's shaking his head, and I couldn't get him. So I moved up to this end, moved across the grid up to him. There wasn't so much lighting up here. And the two ladies are sitting there with their glasses. I couldn't get them again because but the glasses were there, so I dropped one in the glass. This thing from 40 foot up just about hit the roof when it hit the water there.
I think you were lucky to keep your job.
And, and, you know, we just moved the glass quietly. You know, they're all sort of trying to play with it, you know. That's the sort of thing that used to go on, unbeknownst to the audience. And Ian was quite good at doing that. We had Winnie the Pooh here, and it was Pooh's birthday. And I think Christopher Robin gave him the balloon for his birthday. And the idea was, oh, this is wonderful, I've got the balloon. He's throwing it up and catching it. The matinee, the director of the show was down here, second row in or something. He throws it up and through the lights you could see it was full of powder. And he's meant to burst this thing and it goes, powder goes everywhere, including over. She just about fell off the chair laughing, you know. And he just, oh, you know. And there was a bridge over the creek that came into this area.
Yep.
And Eeyore was crossing the bridge. Now Eeyore is a very negative sort of person, you know. He gets halfway across there and he stops and he's looking at it. And unbeknownst to me, Ashton had set up on the top up here a blanket with some foam packing. And he pulled the cord and this stuff just come down in one thump right behind him. And Eeyore never missed a beat and he just went, typical, and carried on walking.
All the little things that you got away with.
But the funny part of the whole of that was, when they had the big downpour and Pooh got stuck up in the tree, Christopher Robin had to go in the upturned umbrella to go and rescue him. The week before, we had Kerry's dance studio, I think it was, had come in here.
Goodness me.
And they had put a scrim across here, mesh type stuff, from that side to that side, about that far up, was coloured like water. And of course, we'll use that again. So we use that again as the water for the flood. There was also a paper mache shark 6 foot long over there. Christopher Robin goes in the upturned umbrella, and of course you could see just to the bottom of the umbrella, gets and rescues Pooh, starts to come back. Standing over here is Ashton slowly pulling the fishing line that's connected to the shark. So you had this situation where, you know, oh, this is wonderful, oh, Robin's great, he saved Pooh, oh, he saved Pooh. They saw the shark and had to leave.
So you just mentioned Kerry's dance school.
Yeah.
So, God, I mean, they're still going.
Yeah.
How many dance schools would you have seen?
Look, there would be, at the peak of it, there's probably 4 or 5 in town that used to come. And they always used to come around about Christmas time, the end of year.
Yes.
But Kerry's was always the last of the year.
Yep.
And to my way of thinking, she was one of the best because she really related to those kids. A lot of the others were technically very good.
Yes.
And would create some people who've gone worldwide in terms of their craft. But Kerry would take little kids in and they all had a ball.
Yeah.
And I think most of the staff enjoyed Kerry's show. One, because it was so much fun, and secondly, it was the last one for the year. Because there was nothing.
I can relate to that.
Nothing but glitter left inside. So, you know, it's.
Yeah.
There's a lot of fun stuff that happens.
And were you involved with the Friends of the Theatre?
No, not directly.
Okay.
No. They started about 2 years, just under 2 years after the theatre opened, about 83, 84 I think they started.
Yep.
And do a great job. They you know, have the wine and cheese. I think they still do that here.
They still
do the wine and cheese. They offer different rates to join.
Yes.
Which give you different.
And good promoters of the theatre as well.
Yeah.
Is what I think. Yeah.
But no, I never got to that because I was always working here. So I thought, no, I won't cross the boundaries and do that side of it. But they were a great mob. They did a lot of things.
Yes.
Yeah. And sometimes at the shows they would put a bit of wine and cheese on afterwards too for the people to stay so they could meet the artists.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, it looks like you've had many fond memories of this place, Tony.
And many more.
That's good to hear. Good to hear. You're welcome in here whenever you want to come in.
Thank you, Andrew.
We'd love to see you in here.
Yeah.
And do we have your mark on the wall?
No, you don't.
Well, we'll have to go and show you the Slim Dusty one and get your photo next to the Slim Dusty
He
mark
wants
on the
to
wall.
hang on to that, I can tell.